Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle, aka Racing Boy Short, and it's Clash weekend. The Daytona 500 is in 2 weeks. These teams are prepping for a fantastic 2025 season, which leads me to this team that we're talking about today. This team has made a bunch of changes. It's a whole new look team, and each year it seems like this team is getting a little bit better, and that is Front Row Motorsports. Front Row Motorsports is a very interesting story when it comes to the Cup Series. They've thought about closing down and selling off all operations multiple times. When they first came into the series, they were kind of just a backmarker team. They didn't start off very good, and I think they were a big joke for a long time for a lot of people. They were like, oh, they're Front Row Motorsports, more like Back Row Motorsports, and just silly stuff like that. They were a joke for a long time. I probably even made fun of them at one point or another because they have been a very difficult team to watch for a very long time. But over the last 5 or 6 years, they've really put it on. Michael McDowell coming to the organization, I think, really boosted this race team to new heights. They had a couple of drivers come through the number 38 over the years as well, like an Anthony Alfredo, John Hunter Nemechek, young drivers. And this team has been through a lot. Like I said, they almost sold house a couple of times. And then this last offseason, instead of selling house, they actually expanded the house by getting a third entry, a third charter from Stewart-Haas Racing. So this team has moved from a 2-car operation to a 3-car operation with 3 drivers in new rides. I think we should start with the driver that actually remained at Front Row Motorsports but moved over to the prime car, and that would be the number 34 car this season, driven by Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland is a driver I've really enjoyed watching over the years, especially as a Kyle Busch fan. He raced for Kyle Busch Motorsports for a while, and that's where I really became acquainted with him. I even liked his little call out to Kyle Busch over the radio when he won at Martinsville. I think that was hilarious. I just really like his attitude, and he really seems to really improve constantly. Ever since he's came to the Cup Series, I've just seen constant improvements week after week. And even last season he outperformed Michael McDowell throughout most of the year, and Michael McDowell has been the star driver of this team for so long, but now McDowell has moved on to Spire Motorsports. Also, check out that video if you haven't already. But Todd Gilliland moving over from the 38 to the 34, I found quite interesting because he's been in the 38 the last couple of seasons. But I think Front Row look at the 34 car as that prime car. They want their best driver, the driver they put the most trust in that 34 car, which makes sense. And also probably wanted him in the car as well. Love's travel stops has been a big pillar of Front Row Motorsports for a couple of years now and actually stayed with the race team. Gilliland had a great year, 22nd in points, got 4 top 10s, a good year. And I'd say the goal for him this year is take it another step. I'd say his goal is get top 20 in points and maybe get 6 top 10s, 7 top 10s. I think that would be a good goal to set for Todd Gilliland. Gilliland, like I said, constantly improving. And with everything I've heard about Ford's relations with these race teams, with Stewart-Haas out of the way, they're going to be able to give some of these other teams more support, and especially Front Row Motorsports. Front Row Motorsports over the last 2 or 3 years has been developing into one of the bigger powerhouses in NASCAR. Now let's move on to the driver that's actually going to be replacing Gilliland in the number 38, and that is Zane Smith returning to Front Row Motorsports. I found this very surprising. I felt like everything that happened last season when it came to the whole deal with Trackhouse and Spire and Front Row Motorsports over Zane Smith, I really felt like possibly Bob Jenkins and Front Row Motorsports could have been pretty hurt by the way everything went. But it seemed like everything might have went cordial because Zane Smith actually rejoins the race team after Trackhouse decides to let go Zane Smith from his contract. So I found it very interesting and kind of cool that Zane Smith was able to return to Front Row Motorsports. Of course, he raced a couple of races for Front Row Motorsports in the Cup Series a couple of years ago, but then he also This is where he really made his name, was at Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series. Zane Smith had a very tough rookie campaign, and that's possibly why you saw him get released by Trackhouse. Had a very rough rookie campaign, finishing 30th in points. But one thing I did enjoy from Zane, honestly, he was awful the first 3 quarters of the year, but the last quarter of the year, I saw a lot of improvement out of Zane Smith. He wasn't all of a sudden the best driver at Spire, but in the last quarter of the year, I'd say he was the second best driver at Spire, only behind Hocevar. Yeah, he went from running around 30th every race to running around 20th or 25th every race, which is a slight improvement, but I definitely saw an improvement out of Zane Smith, and we saw what he was able to do in the Truck Series. He has a lot of potential to be a fantastic Cup Series driver. What would I say his goal is this season? I'd say his goal is somewhat similar to Gilliland, but I would give him a little bit less. Instead of top 20 in points, I'd say probably top 25 in points. And instead of 7 top 10s, I'd probably say 5 top 10s. So if he has a similar year to what Gilliland had last year, I think that's a good year from Zane Smith in Front Row Motorsports. With all these new pieces in places, I don't really expect them to light the world on fire this season, but I expect them to really develop over these next couple of years. Now we're on to the new entry over at Front Row Motorsports, and that is the driver of the number 4, one of the most exciting drivers in the Cup Series, Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson, I've said it here on the channel multiple times, I am a huge fan of Noah Gragson. I love his attitude. He has a fantastic personality. He's everything I really want a NASCAR driver to be, and he also has the talent, but he's had a couple of difficult years. Obviously, everything that happened in his rookie campaign didn't go to plan at all. Not a good rookie season at all over at Legacy Motor Club. And then last year at Stewart-Haas, I'd say for a good part of the year, he was the best driver over at Stewart-Haas. Once we got to that second half of the year, I think Briscoe and Barry kind of took over that role a little bit more. But overall, I'd say he had a fairly strong 2024. Yeah, Gragson ended up finishing 24th in points and 7 top 10s. And what that tells me there is just what I just said a second ago. He had a fairly strong first half of the year, but the second half of the year, he kind of lagged back and didn't really have as much speed. Because in that first half of the year, I honestly thought there was a decent chance he could make the playoffs. And then he really fell off, and Briscoe ended up making the playoffs instead. What would I say is Noah Gregson's goal this season? I would give him the exact same goals as Gilliland. Top 20 in points and 7 top 10s. We saw what Noah Gragson was able to do last year, and he was also in a Ford last year as well. One thing I will give him, though, that this is a new car, a new entry, so those first 5 or 6 races could be pretty difficult for Gragson. Like I said at the beginning, Front Row Motorsports is a team that's been through a lot. It's a team that some say shouldn't even be around anymore, but they are still here, and they've been improving every single year. And Bob Jenkins, the owner over at Front Row Motorsports, seems to have a real passion for the sport. I really like him. He's a great owner. He seems like he does great things over there at Front Row Motorsports. They've improved so much over the years, but this year is going to be, I'd say, almost a transition year. We have 3 drivers in new cars. Gilliland obviously was at Front Row last year, but he is in the 34 instead of the 38. And then we have Zane Smith, who is returning to the race team. And then Noah Gragson, who's making a lateral move from Stewart-Haas over to Front Row. It's going to be a struggle in the first half of the year, I expect, for this team. But in the second half of the year, I expect this team to be performing fairly well and running in the top 15, top 10, and maybe even competing for some wins near the end of the year. Well, thanks for watching. Check out my other team preview videos right here on my channel. Also, check out my live shows. I go live every Monday with the Hit the Pacecar podcast with a couple of my buddies, and we just kind of have some fun talking about different NASCAR topics, try to be as interactive with the chat as we possibly can. Might have to wait in between topics if we're in the middle of a conversation, but it's a lot of fun. We had the first episode last week, and that came out great. And then also on Sunday every Sunday, we'll have the Car on the Hauler post-race show after the race, starting with Bowman Gray. That will be a lot of fun. And then starting the week of the Daytona 500 on Thursday, right before the duels, I will be going live with Weekly Rundown Live, where I'll be going over a couple of news topics. It'll be a solo mission on that one, and I'll be talking with the chat, prepping, previewing the Daytona 500. But I appreciate anybody who watched. Subscribe, like, comment down below. Give me your thoughts on this race team and how they may perform in 2025. But that'll do it for me. Thanks for watching. My name is Kyle, aka Racing Boy Short, saying peace.